Well, Merry Christmas, Nick. And yeah, it wasn't the merriest of Christmases. It was great for a while. It was great right up until 1 o'clock on
Sunday morning.
Sunday.
Yeah.
And what I was really expecting when I woke up Sunday morning was what Walker and Texas Ranger said when Ricky Bobby and Mrs. Bobby decided that they were going to get divorced. Yay, 2 Christmases. Thought, okay, have that one. And then the Pats put a late gift of an AFC title under our trees.
Imagine.
Didn't happen. There's still work to do, but I got to say, I really liked this week's guest. I think he really talked us out of the funk.
Yeah. I mean, someone who I'd say knows the Patriots better than any of us. And he very informational. And I mean, I was down since Sunday, but now I'm back. I'm totally back. And yeah, we're recording on Tuesday right now, but I'm 100% in for the Pat Super Bowl right now after talking.
Yeah. I think we all tend to overreact, and we'll get into the general overreaction of 2 losses in December, which is not how
no one ever sees it.
Yeah, exactly. Like you have to be basically have an AARP card in your wallet to remember a time when you made playoff runs that sometimes included back-to-back losses in December. It's a weird year in the league. There's 50 teams out of 32. Yeah. And I know how ridiculous that sounds as I say it. 50 teams out of 32 are still eligible for a playoff spot if that's it. And Patriots can still move up. They could clearly, be knocked out of the playoffs. It's a matter of not freaking out over the fact that, okay, they've lost to a very good team that they couldn't make any stops on. They're continuing to make mistakes, but there's time to clean this stuff up. Belichick this week talked about, rolling into January, trying not to make the mistakes that they've made so far. And I feel like we talked to a guy who made a lot of sense and came in with a lot of perspective. And yeah, so you ready to get to this?
Yes, sir. Okay.
And want to thank our guest, taking time out of a weird week where it's hard to schedule and everyone's running around. He's from 98.5, the Sports Hub. He writes for their .com, and he's a co-host with Evan Lazar of the Patriots Press Pass podcast, which is on YouTube, and it's appointment viewing for me. He's a great guy, came in with a lot of insight, and it was a terrific conversation. So please welcome to the show, Alex Barth. Let's roll tape. Well, Alex, I've been looking forward to having you on since I was last talked to you on your podcast back in, I think it was September or whatever. Aren't you glad that I picked this tire fire of a week, this dreary, depressing, dystopian hellscape that suddenly the season has become? So yeah, welcome to the show. I'm glad to have you on. So maybe you can talk me out of the funk that losing 2 in a row has gotten me into.
Yeah, I mean, I think in some ways it probably works because I don't know, the derogatory term would be homers. I don't like that one, but we're probably 2 of the bigger optimists covering the Patriots. So maybe this is a good thing because we can kind of calm everybody down and put everything in context here. Not saying Sunday was great. It wasn't, but I think you got to look at the forest through the trees or whatever the saying is with where this team is at.
All right. So you catching hell on the Sports Hub? Because what I find is that when the Patriots have any kind of a setback, face any sort of hardships, then people just come out of the woodwork like the xenomorphs in Aliens, the second one. And I had a guy tweet me the other day. I opened up my DMs, which was probably a mistake. I don't know. But a guy just went in there and said, "Cry, bitch." And I just came back to him and said, your words are hurtful. And the next thing I know, he's telling me, "Oh, I read all your stuff. I'm a Bills fan. We've had it hard for a long time." I'm like, okay, I can live with that. But what kind of hell are you catching from callers or co-hosts or whatever?
Yeah, most of it's from Buffalo, and I don't even remember how this started. It started a few years ago. Me and the city of Buffalo tend to get into it whenever the Patriots play. So I took my victory lap on them in week 13. They're certainly taking their victory lap on me now. They like to call me ugly. They don't use a ton of different insults. Not a ton of variation. I don't know if they're communicating that or not, and I'm not saying they're wrong, but you expect a little versatility from that fan base.
Alex,
And
no, I'm going to step right in here and say, no, you're an extraordinarily handsome man. And
I
how dare
appreciate
they?
it.
I mean, I don't know. I've never been insulted for my looks, so I would know what that's
There you
like.
go.
And right, it's like calling a tall guy shorty or something. I think they're just
Right.
being ironic, but yeah, they're a feisty bunch for sure. And
Look, they show up. I'll give them credit for that. They show up. They come out of the woodwork. They take the bait every time.
were there a lot of them at Gillette? You watched the game from Gillette, right? Because
Yes.
okay, good. I'm glad to get the perspective of someone who was there. Did they come en masse? I figure they had to have, because they circled this as a win, back during the summer.
Yeah, it's funny. I didn't see. I mean, they were there. I didn't see as many as usual. I'm trying to remember back now, because obviously last year nobody's in the building because of COVID. 2 years ago, they generally show out well. I didn't see as many. I didn't, and maybe that's just because it was Christmas week and people are with their families and a road trip stuff. But yeah, it wasn't. They weren't, overly noticeable or anything. I wouldn't say so.
Okay, because I was down for the Cowboys game, and I've never seen anything like it. It was like the old days,
Yeah.
When Patriots fans were giving the season tickets away or whatever, and whoever, like Pittsburgh, had come to town, even the Jets or whatever, and it was an easy ticket to get. It felt like that, without, minus the drunkenness and the hostility. But yeah, you couldn't swing a dead cat without hitting somebody in a Dak Prescott, Ezekiel Elliott jersey or whatever. So I didn't get the impression that the stadium was especially loud as the game went on, right? I mean, someone said that you could actually see like the scoreboard asking people to keep it down when there were those pass interference calls, went against the Patriots, and quiet on offense or whatever. But there were a couple of defensive stands there where it just seemed to me like people were sitting on their hands. Did you get that impression? Because you can never tell on TV.
Right. I mean, I think it got louder. The moments you're talking about where they had to quiet people down when they were on offense, that was the two flags, or the flag the officials picked up on the Jerry Hughes hit.
Yep.
And then when David Andrews got flagged later. It wasn't the loudest it's been this year. I think that first drive just kind of took the crowd out of it. I think people were ready, and then it just, kind of like the team came out flat. There was nothing to really get the crowd going, and they were missing that moment. Had JC Jackson picked that ball off, I think the building was ready to go off. But it wasn't a bad crowd. I know people have kind of tried to push this narrative that the Patriots are now like a second class organization, that Brady's not here. I wouldn't say that. I mean, it was full. People are saying it was empty. People are late getting in. I think it was a long tailgate, but it was full. The people were engaged, but it felt like an average game. It didn't feel up to the level that division rivalry probably should have.
Were you in Indy? Because it seemed like they were out of their mind. Like this was a 50-year storm for them.
Right.
And they were going to, if they all blew a lung out, they were going to do it because they had so much riding on this. And I didn't get that same level of intensity coming out of Gillette.
Yeah, I wasn't in Indy. I heard it was probably a little tamer in person than it looked, or a little tamer in person than it looked on or sounded on TV. I mean, we know how Indy is with the crowd noise, so who knows?
Yeah,
But,
excellent point. And I'm still waiting for them to hang a banner for that, Week 15 Super Bowl that they won. But here's my advice to Pats fans, and I'm looking to go to the game on the 2nd. Looking to take my family, but instead of showing up with a D and a cardboard picket fence, first of all, don't do that. It's the 80s are over. For the love of God, can you come up with another gimmick? But instead of doing that, how about make noise? How about actually try to help your defense? And I watched a guy leaning over the rail during every play on the goal line stand, not making a noise, like you know what I mean? Like it was dead silence. He was just doing pantomime theater, holding up a sign that it's not doing anybody good. So for the love of God, leave that crap to, I don't know, New Orleans or, Las Vegas or places where people dress up, and just show up and make noise like normal people. That's my personal gripe. And while we're on the subject of defense, now most podcasts in lesser hands would start with Mac Jones, but the defense is clearly the issue the last couple of weeks. And you can go back to the Big Bang, and you still won't find a Belichick defense that didn't force a single punt. And I had this impression watching it at home and looked it up. They had one tackle for loss in the game.
Yes.
Never mind a quarterback sack or a hit. They had one negative play that wasn't a Bills penalty. And if you're going to be alarmed about something, it seems to me like that's the thing.
Yeah, that's the most, that is the most alarming thing to me, because this is a defense that, and I have been a big proponent of this defense all year. When they grabbed that, number one ranking in terms of points, I kind of said, this is it, number one defense. And they've gotten to that point because they've made big plays. They've made big plays, and they maybe haven't been perfect all the time, but they were able to come up with the big sack or the big interception or a fourth down stop to kind of cover up some of those imperfections. And I think what you saw on Sunday was, I don't know, like, again, not having the big plays is part of it. It was a perfect storm of every little thing went wrong. People are comparing this to the Boogeyman defense in 2019, and I understand that comparison. Where I'd push back on it is that team they just didn't have the legs. Guys stopped making plays. And I think what you're seeing now is poor coaching decisions, not in play mistakes, but things like jumping off sides, pass interference, things like that. I think they actually sort of did what they wanted to do against Josh Allen, because the book on him's always been play zone deep, force him to take the checkdowns. Eventually he'll get frustrated and he'll throw you one, right? And credit to Josh Allen, and he gets paid too, $500 million. He didn't take the bait. He threw check down after check down after check down, and the Bills have been awful in the red zone all year. I think the Patriots thought they could stop him inside the 20. They stopped him 3 of the first 5. They scored on the last 2. So I think that's ultimately what they wanted to do. The problem with playing that way is, if you're going to play that way and wait for him to throw you one, you have to capitalize on mistakes. And there were 2 that they didn't. And the JC Jackson one, obviously. And then there was one on the Bills' last drive, might have been the same drive, where this isn't a major mistake, but I think if the Patriots win, we're talking about this play a ton. It was a 2nd and 10. The Patriots had just used a timeout. There's like 3.5 minutes to go, and the Bills threw it, and they threw an incomplete pass. And you have to get off the field there. Instead, 2 plays later, Josh Allen bootleg to the left on 4th down, picks up the first. They go in to score to put the game away. So, I think that was an issue. And then just coaching wise, I didn't need 60 minutes to figure out Miles Bryant couldn't cover Isaiah McKenzie. And I think Miles Bryant's a good player. I do. I'd like to see him stay around, but he's not fast enough. McKenzie's one of the fastest players in the league. And at a certain point, the coaching staff need to realize this. And I understand they're shorthanded with Wade inactive and Dwan Williams inactive, but try D'Angelo Ross, try Jalen Mills. I would have tried Devin McCourty, honestly, just because of how fast he is, but try something. And they didn't adjust. And you can blame Miles Bryant all you want. At a certain point, though, it's a reflection of the coaching staff, where this guy's getting beat on every snap and they don't do anything to help him.
Right. There's 2 things you said there, and I'll take the second one first. When exactly did you figure out that Miles Bryant was overmatched by Isaiah McKenzie? Because I started making note of it in the first drive. By the second possession, it was painfully obvious to everybody in the stadium. Like, if I can figure it out, with on my second IPA, in the second quarter, like, how is it that they just kept rolling him out there? And it felt like the first analogy I went to was Kyle Arrington in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And so that they eventually said, well, enough of this. And they brought in, what was that kid's name? Malcolm Butler.
Was it Eric Rowe?
Yeah. They brought in Malcolm Butler eventually.
Oh,
and then
that's right.
they put Brandon Browner on the Jesus, I'll think of his name. The tight end, who was just torturing them.
Chris Matthews.
Chris Matthews. I'm always trying to remember what TV news guy does he have the same name as?
Right.
Yes, it was Chris Matthews. And that was the adjustment, but they made an adjustment.
Right.
And Bryant was still getting burned in the fourth quarter. You mentioned that 3rd and 10. They had him twice 3rd and 10 on the final touchdown drive. And it was to McKenzie for 17. The very next play, it was McKenzie for 15. Both of them with Bryant in coverage.
Route.
And it's like, and do you have any information of what it was that they just kept rolling him out there? I mean, at that point, you would have taken literally anybody. And to me, it started when they didn't dress either Dwan Williams or Sean Wade. I'm not saying either of them would have been the solution, but I think they just looked at, well, he's 5'8", and McKenzie's 5'8". That's a good matchup for us, and clearly it was not.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't heard anything definitive. The two things I can think of off the top of my head, and I'm not saying either of these are justifications, but this might have been their reasoning. I think they were overly worried about Josh Allen running the ball, and they just didn't. So there's two adjustments they could have made, right? They could have helped Bryant and added a second defender, or they could have put another defender in there. And I think in terms of helping Bryant, I think they were so worried about Josh Allen running the ball that they didn't feel like they could spare that asset. And honestly, like that's more of an issue earlier in the game when he was getting beat. Because late in the game, you don't want Josh Allen running the ball. You'd rather him throw it. The other one, just in terms of not replacing him, if they felt that that was a throw Josh Allen couldn't make consistently and they just wanted to bait him into it, maybe they saw something on tape where they thought if Josh Allen made that throw enough times, something would happen that would go in their favor. I don't know what that could be. I mean, it's a pretty straightforward throw. It's a gotcha play in Madden. It wasn't anything overly complicated. So those would be the two closest justifications I can think of. But like you said, it was from the second drive. And I'm wondering maybe at halftime, like, okay, do they want to let D'Angelo Ross watch him a little bit? Do they want to coach him up? They're going to make the switch after the half. And then they come out with it again in the third quarter. And I was like, well, there's something here we don't know, because the coaching staff's better than that. They're better than that. This is what they do. I ripped the Bills. A lot of people ripped the Bills in the first game for not making any adjustments during that game. And rightfully so. They didn't. Well, now, the shoe's on the other foot, and the Patriots came out. They didn't make adjustments, or they needed to make adjustments. And it happened a couple times. There's a glaring one on the offensive side of the ball, I'm sure we'll get to, but this was the biggest one on defense, that they just left Miles Bryant out there holding the bag.
Right. Yeah. And I think our reaction right in the immediate aftermath of a game like this is always, well, they didn't get enough pressure. I mean, that's everybody's go-to is, you got to get after him. You got to move him off his spot. And I felt with Allen, one, that's not the approach with him. It's about containing him. And two, they did get pressure on him. I mean, Christian Barmore, while it didn't show up in the stat line, was kind of lived in the backfield, but it just, you look back and you see how many plays where somebody was coming in a full-on sprint right in Allen's face. And this is where you go, okay, he's still prone to mistakes and he's going to make one. And he delivered it time and time again. I mean, there were a couple of safe throwaways. There was the one to that Jackson got a hand on in the back of the end zone. Would have been a tough catch for him. Or he tried to high point a ball. And that looked to me like Adrian Phillips kind of moved just before the snap, like he was coming up, like he was going to blitz, but then he dropped off and they went into his zone. The disguise coverage there worked for the most part, but generally speaking, they just couldn't fool him to the point where his talent, didn't do him any favors. It's a clumsy way of saying it, but I mean, rolling the pockets, throwing across his body, someone in his face hitting that deep middle zone that he just exploited the whole first half. And so, in that case, I don't think it's the coaching so much. I think it's just, this is the Josh Allen that we've seen glimpses of that the rest of the league has seen a ton of. And I think there's reason to be concerned going forward, because eventually he's going to get your cheat codes and he's going to be able to figure it out. Now, even when you fool him, he's got enough talent to extend the play and the arm to still burn you for a play that you would have beaten him 2 years ago with.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of going forward, I just wonder, they've got to get him a rushing attack because he's taking too many hits. And, I look at a guy like Cam Newton, who basically sold out his body in 2015 to win an MVP and hasn't been the same since. It almost feels like things are starting, and this is big. This isn't like the next 2 weeks. This is like 2-3 years. It almost feels like things are starting to lean that way if they don't get a running back or a rushing attack. They need help up front too. But yeah, no, this isn't baby Josh Allen anymore. I think they got to throw something a little more complicated at him. And again, I don't know if you saw this, Evan Lazar tweeted out Isaiah McKenzie's route tree from the game.
No,
I mean, it's the same route over and over. It's the same deep over, just again and again and again from right to left, and just kind of letting Allen throw back across the formation. And clearly he was comfortable with it, and the Patriots didn't have an answer for it. And Allen, I thought, I saw some people saying it was the best game of his career. It wasn't. it might have been the smartest game of his career, just because, again, he never took the bait. He took the check downs. He took the 8-10 yard completions. He didn't get caught, looking deep when there were opportunities underneath. And that's a game changer. If he's going to do that, he does have that immense physical talent that's going to put him over the top.
Well, the best player on the Patriots on either side of the ball over the course of the year has gotten a little quiet, or am I just counting sacks here? But I feel like Matthew Judon just hasn't turned up the last couple of weeks. Am I just being oversimplifying things?
No, I mean, he certainly hasn't shown up as much. I think with the Indy game, because people are talking about now, 2 biggest games of the year and he disappears. He's a pass rusher. Indy ran the ball how many times, right? They only threw it 12. That wasn't a game for him to show up in Indy. You'd like to see him, show up against the run, but it's not like that was anything he was doing before. The Buffalo game's a concern because they had him off Josh Allen's right side. And if Allen's going to leave the pocket, you want him moving left. You could not let him move right. And he moved right at will pretty much during that game. And that's on Judon. It's on Judon to set that edge. It's on Judon to contain him. And I don't know if it was an issue. It was a little bit of everything. It was a little bit of he couldn't get pressure. It was a little bit of he's maybe getting too far up the field and Allen's escaping underneath, things like that. But yeah, he hasn't been quite he didn't show up in that game like he has in other games. And I go back to, and it's what we talked about before, right? With the defense coming up with the big play when they need. Remember like that, I think it was the Chargers game where they're starting to look kind of iffy. And then he gets it was the Houston game. The defense starting to look iffy. And then he gets back-to-back sacks in the red zone. And then Houston has to kick a field goal instead of a touchdown. And then the Patriots come down and score. And those back-to-back sacks were just like, you could tell the team flipped on that. And he had a similar play in the Chargers game too, where he had a sack on a 3rd down, forced a field goal, and then it felt like the game turned from that moment. So you're waiting for him to kind of come in. It's not just that he was getting sacks. Obviously, that's great. But it felt like he was getting them in the biggest moments, and he was kind of flipping the game for the Patriots. He was helping, turn the momentum around. I'm a big believer in momentum. They needed that play on Sunday. You were waiting for that play all game. And he's the guy it's either him or JC Jackson that's going to deliver it. JC Jackson had the chance. He didn't. And I don't know that Judon ever really came that close to making that play.
Right. Anybody on defense before we flip to the other side of the field that especially stood out for you? Anyone that I guess it's hard to pick anybody when you never put the punter on the field. I mean, I think Adrian Phillips maybe, but then again, Phillips wearing the red sleeves. Like that's a diabolical move. 16
off.
Games into a season. It's like when they switch numbers in training camp. And you and I have talked at camp, like how the biggest challenge every year is figuring out people's numbers without checking the sheets. And I'm like, wow, Judon's all over the field. Oh wait, no, he's just been taken out of the play, and it's somebody else. But Phillips, I guess, did an adequate job on the tight ends, maybe, or am I just being the Pollyanna that you mentioned that we always get accused of being?
Right. No, I mean, he was okay. I think if I had to pick somebody who stood out, and you already mentioned him. I mean, Barmore was good again. And that's pretty typical Christian Barmore. His best games this year outside of the Carolina game, the stat sheet doesn't tell you. Like, he's a guy where you actually have to watch the game. You have to watch him to understand the kind of difference he's making. And I thought he played well again. Sometimes you make a play and the other guy makes a better play. And that's what Josh Allen was doing at times. Bill likes to say those guys get paid too. But he got in Josh Allen's face, 3 or 4 times, and I thought he played pretty well. So I'd go with Barmore as my defensive MVP from this game for the Patriots, if you want to put it that way.
Yeah, with an asterisk, I guess. So Jones, it occurs to me, and this is in my darkest moments, when I wake up in the middle of the night, I'm in a cold sweat, and my worst fears start to like overtake me. That he played 13 games as a senior, and most college guys at any position, they spend the month after Thanksgiving getting ready for a bowl game, not going to class, maybe testing the limits of their school's sexual conduct policy, but not playing football. Right. And I guess if you really want to be, the cynical caller, if I want to be Jerry from Weymouth on line 2, go ahead. This guy's burned out. He's burned out, Alex. He can't play because he's, they should have started Cam for the first month and then brought him in. He's exhausted. I'm not saying that, but is there an element of that he's hit a wall, so to speak?
Yeah, somebody's going to clip that out of context. There you go. Jerry Thornton,
Yeah.
Pat should have kept Cam. I think one of the reasons I like Mac, one of the reasons we all like Mac, and I think more importantly, one of the reasons the Patriots invested so heavily in Mac Jones is just his love of the game, just like his pure love of football. And he talked about, Thanksgiving week. Hey, what are you going to do? Oh, I'm going to watch film. I'm going to spend time with my family. I'm going to watch film, right? I think he said the same thing more or less before Christmas, right? He doesn't watch any movies. He doesn't watch TV. He doesn't celebrate holidays. He watches film and he takes pajama pictures with his girlfriend. That's pretty much it. And for what it's worth, I don't think that was entirely lip service when he said that. I think he legitimately means it. So if there is somebody who's going to avoid that kind of drop off, Mac Jones fits the profile. Now, that's not to say it's not there entirely. He's a rookie, and these are the rookie growing pains that when you have one quarterback for 20 years, maybe you don't realize exists so much, and then suddenly the guy's right in front of you, and you have to confront these realities. I think some of it is he's played two really good defenses the last couple of weeks. I think that's certainly part of it. I think the offensive line has taken a step back the last 2 weeks. That's certainly part of it. And there's more tape on him now, and he has to adjust. And I think some of the things he got away with in October, he's not going to get away with now because teams have seen them. You're starting to see that show up. So I don't know that there's one thing that it's like, oh, he stopped doing this, right? Or, oh, he stopped doing that. I think the rookie wall is a culmination of things. It's like you said, it's playing more games than you're used to. It's putting things on tape. There's so many different things that go into it. I think it's probably, you think about these guys too. So he won the national championship. He played into January, goes right to the Senior Bowl. Then it's combine season, then the draft. Then he's got to show up for OTAs. I mean, he really never had an offseason. He's basically been playing football nonstop since September of 2020. So I think, it's not to make excuses or anything like that. It's just, I think when people like to throw the term rookie wall out, and I guess you can call it that if you want, but that doesn't mean any one thing. It can mean so many different things that I think it's important to specify kind of what's going on.
That's an outstanding point, that really since they started camp of his senior year, he's been going virtually nonstop, even though it's
Right.
not, not having a game every week. But yeah, okay. It hadn't occurred to me that he had about as short an off season as is possible in football, because
Right.
the bowl season has now been extended, and then having to do his pro days and all that stuff. Okay, fair point. And we had Zoe on last week, and he agreed with what Nick and I were saying about the fact that he had some bad drives against Indy and then responded was a positive. I mean, too little, too late, and we're long past moral victory season here. But it was refreshing to see a rookie have some bad throws and come right back, like he did against Dallas.
Right.
When he throws a terrible pick, and the next time he touches the ball at 75 yards. This one, I thought he was as inaccurate as I've seen. Like, I didn't think he was seeing ghosts. I didn't think he had happy feet. I don't think he was sensing pressure that wasn't there. He wasn't making bad decisions. It's just he was missing throws that we're accustomed to seeing him make.
Yeah, I think, and some of the coaches talked about it. I've seen media people suggest this too, that him and the receivers just might not have been on the same page, and they're reading things differently. And that's what happened on the Hunter Henry throw, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that was probably his worst game. I know he threw 3 picks against the Saints, but the offensive line was abysmal in that one. Like, I put that more on the offensive line than him. And that's not to say, hey, it's his worst game. Oh, hey, he played his worst game, the biggest game of the year. The experiment's over. Let's start talking about Desmond Ridder. Like, that's absolutely not what that is, despite what some people think is happening. It's a wake-up call kind of game. And yeah, I just thought the things he's fallen back on, like when he made mistakes against the Colts, I thought it was him maybe trying to grow more as a passer, trying to do some things he hasn't done, right? The passing game hasn't been great in the red zone, and he's trying to throw the ball down in the red zone. In the low red zone, he throws 2 picks. Like, that's a growth moment. I think his issues in this game, they were things we've seen him do well, right? Like the basic accuracy, like you're talking about. I think he struggled with that. I think there were a couple bright spots. The play where he redirects, it was Jacoby Myers, right, late in the game. I think that's a veteran kind of play from him. I thought his mobility actually looked good. Ironically, everybody panned him as, well, look at Josh Allen, who is the big arm and can run, and Mac Jones is neither of those things. I don't know that he showed a big arm, but he was moving around in the pocket pretty well. But yeah, you just wonder what went on with the accuracy. Is it the hand injury? Is it the cold? Is it just he couldn't set his feet because he was under pressure? And again, it goes back to it's probably a little bit of everything. Yeah, that's kind of where I was at with him, is that they were all fixable mistakes. It's probably as many mistakes as he's made in a game, but I think they were all fixable.
Right. And I would still say that, we've yet to see a point where he doesn't look like he's in command of an actual NFL offense. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's
Right.
like this complete mechanical breakdown, or, a panic throw off his back foot, or jumping away, or whatever. You still see him going through his progressions, and when he's switching on the other side of the field, his feet change with him, and all those things that the real quarterback files like love. And when they're laying down, taking a nap, and growling and twitching their feet, that's the kind of quarterback they dream of. So that's fine. It's just the results weren't there this time. But I don't know that there's a throw that he made that you'd really want to have back. Even the one to Harry, yeah, I was a little bit behind him, but again, I think that was more a symptom of the N'Keal Harry problem, which we really need to talk about. Like, it's time for us to all sit down together and have a candid conversation about this. Because I looked at the video, I tweeted this out, I included it in the knee-jerk reaction. But did you watch him throughout that play?
Yeah.
Not making a sharp cut. Okay, the ball's slightly behind him, kind of flailed at it. And when the ball's in the air, it's the purge. Like, there are no rules. Every NFL player now gets to create acts of mayhem. And Matt Milano, the first thing he did was shove N'Keal Harry to the ground. And Harry just kind of got up and meandered towards the ball carrier. And it was like, at what point is this guy going to just say, I'm fighting for my career here, and I've got to err on the side of being too aggressive, or, and it's not toughness. I'm not saying that. He took a blow to the head last week and didn't miss a game. It's just, I'm long past my final point of patience with him. And that drop was one. And then Jones came right back at him, and with a zero effort play. Please give me some reason to be hopeful about this guy for the rest of the season.
Well, they're going to need to run the ball down the stretch, and he's a damn good run blocker. So there's how you're hopeful. I think. Look, I'm glad you started with the interception, because as people ask me about the drop this week, and I try to talk about it. What's to editorialize? He may as well have placed the ball on the ground, right?
Mm-hmm.
The other play, it's one thing. What bothered me on that play from him, and look, it's not a perfect throw from Jones, but it's one thing if it's Gunner or Christian Wilkerson, or like Edelman back in the day. Like, if it's one of those smaller receivers and you get outbodied for a football, so be it. That's the game. But N'Keal's 6'3", 220. And at a certain point, you got to turn it into a defensive back and make a play on that ball. And the way he flails his arm, you'll appreciate this one. Reminded me of A-Rod in 2004, swiping at Christian Arroyo's glove. The way he just kind of flicks his wrist at it.
With the big hamburger helper gloves. Yeah.
Exactly. I think he didn't know where the ball was. And it's funny. One of the things I think they coach really well is receivers turning into defensive backs on a misthrown ball. We've seen Nelson Aguilar make a couple of really nice plays like that this year. I actually thought Jonnu Smith early in the year made a nice play on a ball like that. It's a little thing. You don't want to have to do it, but those kind of things add up over the course of a game, right? It can be a difference maker. N'Keal, he didn't do it on that play. Like, he's bigger than everybody around him. The Bills' defense is small. Matt Milano's a linebacker. N'Keal's bigger than him. He needs to box everybody out, make sure that football at least hits the turf, at least if he doesn't catch it. So you talked about the effort. That's kind of what bothered me. I still had hope for him. I was joking going into that game that if he has a big game and they beat the Bills, the draft pick's worth it. I'll never complain again. But, it's 50. It was 50-50 to me, where I think he certainly hasn't developed the way you want him to, but they never played him to his strengths. Right? He's a big physical downfield receiver, and they're trying to turn him into this precise footwork route runner. And it's just, if that's the guy you wanted, draft AJ Brown. Like, he was never that kind of player. It almost looked like he was playing out of position. And it was like, if they just gave him those chances, because we saw him right last week in Indy, contested catch down the field. He makes the catch. He had a really nice contested catch against the Jets earlier this year, against the Chargers last year, 2 in that situation where you just let him use his size and his strength to beat a corner to the football. And it's like, if they just give him some more of those chances, like maybe there's something there. And then he does a great job of it. He gets out in front of the receiver or the corner. He's big. The guy can't get in front of him, and he drops the ball. And at that, literally and figuratively. And at that point, it's like, well, all right. They finally let him do what he does best, and he still couldn't make the play.
Oh, before I do a shovel pass to Nick Fasoli here, I just there's a fun fact, and I apologize to the guy who tweeted this out because I can't remember who the source of this was, but he said that in Harry's career, he's had 98 targets, which DK Metcalf would call like September, but okay.
Right.
And 47% of those have been either incomplete, intercepted, or a fumble. That's disastrous. I mean, that's bottom of the roster, a guy who's making a living as a gunner who type numbers. And
right.
You got that out of the 32nd pick in the draft. So yeah, file that one away and then set fire to it and never think of it again, because it's the most depressing stat I've heard all year. Nick, what do you got first, buddy?
All right, so I got 2 things for you guys. So the first thing is, from both of you, who do you think were the top 3 players for the Bills in Sunday's game?
Allen for sure. McKenzie, career game. Boy, I'm gonna think of.
See, it's funny because I said this to somebody after the game. Everybody who had their feet on that turf, the players, the coaches, the referees, both teams, everybody, 2 people had a good game. Josh Allen, Isaiah McKenzie. The rest of the Bills, I did not think play well. I mean, how many balls did they drop in the end zone, right? I thought their defense blew contained quite a bit. The referees obviously didn't have a good game. The coaches did. Like, those might have been the only 2 players who were good overall the whole day.
Dawkins was blocking Matt Judon most of the game, right? Did I get that
Yes,
right? I mean,
yeah, he would have been. Yeah, he would have been. So
it kept him out of the backfield for the most part. But again, the Patriots were playing contained there. They weren't selling out for sacks. So maybe there, but I can't pick any of the interior linemen because, like we said, Barmore was arguably the best Patriot. Who do you got, Nick?
Well, I'm sorry, but you guys were both you were wrong, but you said Allen, but the top 3 were N'Keal Harry, the referees, and then Josh Allen. That was the top 3 players for the Bills. And then
well played by you. Okay.
Yeah.
I owe you a beer for that one. But yeah. Harry for sure. And the officials.
Yep.
Nick, explain to me how in 2021 a quarterback can get horse collar tackled.
That was
3
my
steps out of bounds.
Yep.
Like,
that was my next.
That was like, pick a penalty, any penalty. Okay, now take it out. Now put it back on the deck. Don't show it to me, and I'll tell you which one you pick. You could have picked any of about a half a dozen.
Yep, that was my next comment, because first off, Milano should have been kicked out of that game in 30 seconds if we were doing the same rules as college football. But I don't understand why those 2 don't go hand in hand if you're going to enforce the no hitting the quarterback so toughly throughout the regular season, and we come to a big playoff game and it just seems to be thrown out the window. So, I mean,
yeah,
I don't know.
Just to correct you, Jerry Hughes was the one who.
Oh, was it Hughes?
Yeah.
But you're thinking of the second one.
That's
the one on
that
was Milano. Yeah. See, the thing with the Hughes hit for me, I'm fine if that's not a penalty. Like, I'm saying, like, in general, I am okay if that's not a penalty. But after the play with Josh Allen in Buffalo in the first game where he hadn't even landed out of bounds yet.
Yes.
And right? Like, the precedent's been set. But the thing is, at the time, I'm like, so the fact that they picked up that flag, to me, is the 3rd biggest issue with that play.
Mm-hmm.
And let me also preface this by saying, Patriots, the officiating is what it is. You deal with it week in and week out. I believe at the end of the day, there's bad calls that change games, but it all evens out. that being said, my 3 biggest issues with that play in order. First off, you want to pick up the flag, pick up the flag. You can't penalize a team for being upset their quarterback got hit.
Yeah.
And they did
right.
that twice.
And then they
Right.
called taunting on David Andrews.
Right. So that was the second one. Right. So they essentially did the same thing twice, was a little different. And it's, that's how you lose control of the game, especially if it's just verbal, which with Trent Brown, it was just verbal. He didn't touch anybody. Right. Let the game police itself. So that's problem number 1 with that play. Problem number 2. So this is hindsight's 2020, but after the game, we get the pool report about what the official said, and he called it incidental contact. And Hughes reaches out and grabs him. Like, it's not like they were both running and Hughes was running faster than him and he caught up to him and he bumped into him. Hughes reaches forward, makes an act to reach forward and grab him. And if you want to call it a pull down, if you want to call it he was holding him up, whatever, the reality is he reached out and grabbed him. So that, by definition, is not incidental contact. So that was my second biggest problem with that play. And then my third biggest would be picking the flag up in general. But it's what happened after. It's the way they handled it after, and then how they explained it to me that upset me more so than the actual play itself.
Yeah.
The
it was
TV
ridiculous.
broadcast seemed to indicate that Belichick was yelling, "You're officiating intent."
Mhm.
And
Right,
yeah, okay.
yeah.
So you're reading Jerry Hughes's mind now. Like, was he trying to hit him out of bounds? Well, okay, we know the play you referenced 2 weeks ago. Allen's still in bounds and got a gentle shove out of bounds. Officiate the intent there. The intent was to stop the play, to
Right.
force him.
Not
of
even
bounds.
Allen gently going out of bounds. Allen diving for the first down.
Yes.
Still in air, in bounds. And then we get called for that. And then Max 3 feet off the sideline, out of bounds. Like, that's just like, if you're gonna call it both ways. I don't know. It's just like unbelievable. I was shocked that officiating crew even got out of New England, to be honest.
And my biggest concern with that is that what we're seeing is creeping into the game more and more. And it started about maybe 10 years ago. It's what I call the NBA-ification of football, which is you call it different for different people. If you hit player A, well, he's an established superstar, so now you're in deep trouble. But this other guy is still kind of earning his way into the game. And so therefore, he's kind of more fair game. And there was no better example of this than Rob Gronkowski's last like 4 or 5 years in New England, where he was leading the league in OPI calls. Every time he got open, it started to be a push off. But meanwhile, you could commit armed assault against him. And it's like, well, you know what? They got to try to stop him somehow. Well, you can hit him in the knee. So I worry that that's where we're going in this league. And even as I say this, I hear this through the, Bills fans' ears who, all think that there's a special rule to protect Tom Brady. That actually was the Carson Palmer rule. But I know they always think that
Right.
he got all the calls. But I think we're clearly seeing that there's a different set of different standards for a rookie quarterback than there is for Josh Allen, who's an MVP candidate now.
Yeah, I think all you can ask for is consistency. I'd probably rather than I get players you got to keep players safe, but under that umbrella, I'd rather obviously, and I think everybody would agree with me, they undercall it than overcall it. But if they're undercalling it, if they're I'll take overcalling as long as it's consistently overcalled. Right? That's as long because you got to know if you know what you can and can't get away with. It just lets the players play a cleaner game. It makes the game flow better. It's just more enjoyable product. So that crew didn't really have consistency. They didn't have, their thumb on the pulse of the flow of the game, any of that. That's what bugs me. Like if there's a ticky-tack call, but it's made the same way 4 or 5 times in a game, you just kind of throw your hands up and you say, all right, that's how the crew sees it. So be it. Right. I generally won't complain about that. I think that that's just, the human element of the game. It's when you have the same things happening called different ways for or against your team, by the way. I'm saying this as a football fan, not as a Patriots fan. It's when things are getting called, the same plays getting called different ways, that gets frustrating because it makes the game take longer. It makes the game more dangerous. And it's less enjoyable to watch because you don't know what's going on. It's like that awful fumble out of the end zone rule. Every single time that happens, we all have to set aside 30 minutes of our lives to try to figure out exactly what the rule is and what the hell is going on.
Yeah, 1,000%. Just call it the same way for everybody, regardless. It's like a strike zone. You know what I mean?
Right.
If the high strike is being called the whole game and you're taking high strikes, eventually it's on you. The taunting rule, same thing. We can all agree it's terrible, but if they call it every time, great. But they don't. Remember Cassius Marsh taking steps towards the sideline after getting a sack and getting flagged, and he said, "Oh, it's because the ref bumped into me and it was some personal attack." Well, no one knows who you are, Cassius Marsh. There should be allowances made for protecting your quarterback. Absolutely. Again, if this happened, if one of Peyton Manning's linemen had gone after somebody after Manning took a shot, we'd all be like lauding him as a hero, and he'd be getting decorated in the White House right now or whatever. So yeah, both those calls, the one on Brown, the one on Andrews, were hot garbage. But again, Patriots are still making unforced errors that we're not used to seeing in December.
Also,
usually by now they've gotten all this out of their system and they're letting other teams make them, and now they're doing it.
I would say real quick on the Andrews thing too, there's an interesting juxtaposition, because do you remember the Chargers game when Mac got hit late and Andrews almost started a fight? They were down there near the red zone. And I mean, Andrews came. So this goes back to, again, the explanation from the officials after the game. And they basically explained the Andrews one as, I think the exact phrase they used is they had the game under control. And then Andrews came in. I thought it was bang, bang. And then on top of that, okay, so if that amount of time constitutes under control, go back and watch the Chargers game when Andrews, whoever it was that hit Mac late. I mean, it's significantly later because Andrews was coming from further away, significantly later. And Andrews didn't get flagged for that one. And frankly, at the time, I was a little surprised he didn't get flagged for that one. But it's the same thing where, okay, well, he came in 5 seconds late a couple of weeks ago, more aggressively, and didn't get flagged for anything. Now he's coming in half a second late and really just yelling, but this one's a taunting. So it's okay. We don't know the rule now because we have contradicting evidence here. There's film that shows both sides of it. So that's really what the backbreaker is.
Yeah, I agree. The Chargers one was way more aggressive on Andrews' end, I think. And honestly, if I was anyone on the Bills, I would not fuck with David Andrews. That's one guy you don't want to mess with.
Right.
I mean, he looks like a guy you meet down in a bar and he'll knock your front teeth out.
Right. If he had to live the rest of his life with a hook for a hand and got to tell a story about, I lost this hand defending my rookie quarterback, he'd be proud of that. You know what I mean? I'd be the first one to buy him a beer and say, thank you for your service. So and he's unintimidatable. And so a guy like that deserves extra consideration by the league for sure. And if the mission is to protect quarterbacks, and that's what these guys do for a living, you can certainly live with a little pushing and shoving.
Sure. Yeah, I agree. And the other thing too, and this is just the taunt, I'm going beyond Pat's Bills at this point. You're talking about taunting. They're playing a game. Just let them have fun. Just like a little bad blood, sports are obviously, everybody needs to be respectful of each other, but aren't sports better when there's just a little bit of hate in there? Just a little bit. And I feel like the taunting penalty is trying to get rid of some of that. So,
yeah, that's an outstanding point. And who asked for this? Like, were there family groups, like concerned moms, some acronym, concerned moms preventing the corruption of our children or something, like went to the NFL over the summer and demanded, like, my kids are on the playground and they're taunting one another. And it's all because someone was scoring a touchdown and waved at the cornerback that he just burned. Like, nobody asked for this. No one. There's so many other issues with football right now, and they decided to correct this thing that wasn't broken, and we all know what an over-aggressive celebration is. You want to ban someone spiking the ball in somebody's face? Yeah, that's easy enough to do. But now it's, when everything becomes open to interpretation, and as you mentioned, everything becomes a 30-minute timeout, and we're going to go to commercial break, and here's the guy with the big ribbon on his car in the driveway yet again, or those little brats in the pool in the Geico ad with the sprinkler system going, that I want to send every one of those kids to an iPhone factory overseas. Sorry, but I digress. The point being that there's many things wrong with football. Taunting hasn't been one of them. since time immemorial. So
Yeah. I have fun watching the players have fun. Like that's what it comes down to me. So let the players have fun.
Has anyone been tormented by the camera where they go over and they have their pose and their celebration? I can live without it. I don't need it. Doesn't increase my enjoyment, but it doesn't detract in any way.
Right.
And they allow that, but they can't allow somebody to bark at somebody. It's like you said, solve the problem on the field. You know, if I wouldn't taunt David Andrews because he'll snap my neck. You know, I wouldn't jaw at Trent Brown because, you know, he's a planetoid who could kill me with one hand. So problem solved. Anyway, Nick, you haven't asked your weekly question about your guy yet.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've been on him all season. Obviously, I didn't really see much of him this game. He was down blocking more than of anything. But what are your thoughts on Jonnu Smith?
I was going to see if you could guess who he was talking about, because
I kind of figured it out. I was wondering, I thought maybe it was going to be, at first I thought Hunter Henry. Yeah, Jonnu Smith. So, I keep going back to some comments Josh McDaniels made probably in October, right? It was around the halfway point of the year. And he was asked about Jonnu Smith's lack in production. And McDaniels called it a foundational year. And that stood out to me because the role Jonnu would ideally play in New England is very complex. It has the potential to be game breaking, but it's very complex. And it's not super compatible with what he did in Tennessee. And I don't know that, and this isn't to say Jonnu Smith is dumb or anything. I just think they probably are throwing a ton at him. And I think it's the kind of thing that might take more than a year to learn. And a comparison, there's a couple comparisons out there, right? Danny Amendola got here his first year, and it didn't really look like there was a plan for him. And then obviously becomes a key part of a couple Super Bowls. Another one is Stefan Gilmore, and people forget those first 4 games here.
He was bad.
He was atrocious. I mean, people were talking about making him a healthy scratch after he signed, 100-something million, 4 games after he signed a $100-something million contract. He got hurt in that Bucs game on Thursday night, goes on IR, comes back, and was a lockdown corner from that point on. And I'm not necessarily going to say, hey, Jonnu Smith is going to be great starting next year. But I think the kind of player he is in the history of the team, I could see if ultimately, their big pick, you don't want to, it sounds like I'm making excuses. You don't want to flush away a year of a contract away. You don't want to just give up, especially a contract that big, a year. But I wonder if there's a bigger picture plan for him that just they couldn't get, especially with a rookie quarterback and making the quarterback change so late in camp. I wonder if what they wanted to do with him couldn't get implemented in the time they had to implement it. And if he's somebody who could be one of these guys who kind of emerges after he spent some time in the system and maybe spent an offseason in the system, right? Gilmore in 2017, even after he came back after that Bucs game, he was good, but he wasn't locked down Steph yet. And then he got that full offseason and he came back in 2018. And we all know, right? He wins Defensive Player of the Year. So it's a lofty comparison. Yeah, it was the 4th or 5th game. It was something like that.
I would say the 4th game of that year was against Houston, if I'm not
then
mistaken.
It was the 5th game. It was that Tampa Thursday night game.
Yeah, and they were on pace to be the worst defense in history. Yeah. I think they'd given up 300 yards passing in all 4 games, and there was a
in the most
freeze frame somebody had of a big first down conversion, and they're all going like this, and they're all looking at Gilmore, and he's got his hands up in the air, shrugging his shoulders. And you're right, the switch flipped. Tight end in this system, it does seem like it's an especially complex spot. Maybe the second most complex third maybe after quarterback and middle linebacker, because you're making a million calls. And you look at Gronk and Hernandez, their first season, the numbers were pretty pedestrian while they were figuring out, even though Gronk clearly was, a superior physical specimen and didn't take long to figure it out. But that first season was just kind of like a placeholder statistically. So I hope you're right. I think I heard today that he's in Smith's last 6 games, he's had more than 1 catch once.
Yeah.
Yeah. He doesn't have more than 2 catches in a game this season, but it's a lofty comparison, but I find with the Patriots, this is kind of my approach to predicting them. People like to call Bill Belichick unpredictable. And there was a time when that was true, And it still is true to an extent. But I think when you do anything, as long as he's done this, there's just going to be patterns. There's naturally going to be patterns because everybody has tendencies, and maybe they're subconscious, but whether it's, they love players who transferred in college. That's emerged as a pattern. They love wide receivers who changed positions. They had 3 of them on the team last year. 2 of them are still here this year, and then Edelman. SEC quarterbacks, the last 4 quarterbacks he's drafted, at least at some point played in the SEC, right? Jacoby Brissett transferred out of Florida, but he was there. So you can find these little patterns and you try to apply them. And to say Jonnu Smith is going to get to where Stefan Gilmore got to, that's a long way. But Gilmore, Amendola, there's rookies who have done it. You could put Damian Harris in this category if you want, I think, where sometimes guys just need a year. They need a year to figure it out, and they come back in year 2, and suddenly everything's not as foreign to them, and it just allows them to be more comfortable, to play quicker, to play more reactionary, and it's a very reactionary scheme. So I'm not, it's a disappointing season for Jonnu Smith. It certainly is. You expected more, you wanted more, they paid him all that money. But I'm not ready to write him off yet as some sort of bust that the team totally screwed up by signing him and they should get rid of him. Like, I'm not close to that yet.
Yeah, I think we can add pass catching back to that that little category that we put up too. You look at Kevin Falk, took a little while to become Kevin Falk.
Sure.
Shane Vereen was, just kind of taking up space for a season or two. And then James White. Nobody 2 years into James White's career was saying, wow, this guy's the next big thing. And, now Brandon Bolden has stepped into that role. So yeah, you're absolutely right. It happens. Nick, you were going to say, I'm sorry.
Yeah. I was just going to say, I don't disagree. And like I said, from what he's done in the field so far this year, I mean, I don't hate, like, he's a very good run blocker. He down blocks extremely well. He doesn't like totally fulfill the role that Gronk had, because Gronk could down block on anyone. But something that I don't want to see, and this could actually be a second question, is do you think, obviously I'm a Mac guy, Jerry's a Mac guy, do you think Jared Stidham's time in New England is over totally? Because I think that's someone who's been given up on.
Yeah, for all intents and purposes. I mean, I wasn't that high on Jared Stidham when they took him. When they took him, my reaction was, why did they draft Danny Etling? They already have him. Right. An SEC quarterback who development probably got stunted because he was playing out of system. And I just, there's a pretty strict physical ceiling. He's a smart guy. And I think there's some value in having him on the scout team. And if he's going to stay around that, that's why they liked Etling. Etling, for as much as we joked about him and then moving him to receiver and all of that, the guy knows the game of football, especially well for somebody his age and his situation when he came in. I think there's immense value to having that kind of guy on the team for things like the scout team. I think Jared Stidham at this point is probably in that same category. I just, he had his shot last year. And, to me, what told us everything was, it was no secret Cam Newton was struggling at the end of the year. And clearly they saw something behind the scenes that Cam Newton was still a better option than Jared Stidham. I think sometimes we don't recognize when a team's telling us something, and they are, just based on their decisions. Like I was talking, opposite conversation, but same idea. So I was talking about this on the Sports Hub today. Jimmy Garoppolo is not a starting NFL quarterback. How do I know that? Because the San Francisco 49ers told me he's not a starting NFL quarterback because they traded 3 first-round picks to trade up and get Trey Lance. Jared Stidham's not a starting NFL quarterback. I know that because the Patriots didn't go to him last year when they had a non-starting caliber quarterback in the lineup. So that's kind of where I'm at with Stidham. Do they keep him around as a backup? I could see it, but, I don't think there's any, ideas of, hey, if things go south with Mac, we have him as a plan B. Like, I don't think it's that.
No.
I don't think there's any ideas of, if they have things locked up week 18, hey, let's put Stidham in and maybe he pulls a Matt Flynn and throws for 500 yards and we can trade him for a top 100 pick. Like, I don't think there's any of that. I think at this point he's here, he's on the roster, he's contributing in the room, and that's pretty much the whole story.
Alex, in the time that we still have you here, I want to circle back a little bit to something you alluded to a bit about, when you were saying Jonnu Smith and, he needs to develop it. Are we at the point after 2 losses in December, which we're not terribly used to, that we could be looking at this is what we thought it would be all along, which is a rebuild year? Because 2 weeks ago, I certainly was believing it. I think I still believe it, that we were able to skip the reboot. 2020 was the only step back. And now this is a team that can make a playoff run. are we staring reality in the face that, nope, this is what we thought it was all along? Get a quarterback established, bring some other guys along, and make a run next year.
So this is the big question I've been posing to people the last couple of days. Can the season be a success and a disappointment at the same time? And I think it can. And people hate this take, but I keep giving it. I've been giving it since August. This year is one long preseason. That's essentially what this is. And the way, Patriots fans aren't used to this because the Patriots have operated. They had Tom Brady every year was a Super Bowl run, blah, blah, blah. The way normal teams operate, now the Patriots are 1-32. You kind of build on it's a 4-year window, right? You draft the quarterback, you sign all these players to 3 or 4 year contracts. You're looking at a 4-year window, and everybody's got to get acclimated, especially when you have a rookie under center. You just got to get used to it. And that's not to say they can't come out and win games. That's the thing. You can be in year one of a rebuild and still compete, and they've done that. I think ultimately they're at where they should have been this year. The biggest box to check this year, when people would ask me in the preseason, what's a successful season? 9 wins, 10 wins, 11 wins. A successful season was proving that Mac Jones was an NFL quarterback. A successful season was us not having to go back into the quarterback carousel this spring and talk about the Marcus Mariotas and the Mitchell Trubisky's of the world, which we didn't have to, which I feel very confident saying we don't have to do. And I think, when I went in, I looked at it, I said, all right, they should still be in it for those 2 Bills games. Those 2 Bills games should mean something. They obviously did. And I was like, they should be in it for the wild card, which they absolutely are. The path makes it hurt a little bit more because, when you say that, you think they're kind of just hanging around that same spot. You don't think they're going to end up in the 1 seed for multiple weeks. So that certainly hurts. And you hope that they didn't blow their shot at it. And this shouldn't be. They should progressively get better for the next 4 years. And that's why I look at this and I say, hey, ultimately, as disappointing as that Bills game was, and as disappointing that it's going to be that they don't win the division, this is the floor. This isn't a window closing. This is a window opening. And I think back to, I've heard Ted Johnson talk about this and other guys from that team talk about it as well. I think that, I've heard them talk about in the early dynasty teams that 2000 season was so important because they learned what it took to win in the NFL. And in 2000, they went 5-11. Mm-hmm. So it's not apples to apples, but if the foundation in 2000 of 5-11 led to 3 Super Bowl wins in 4 years, well, now you're looking at a 10 or 11 win foundation. And, where can, if they can propel themselves from here as they should, then I think we look back on this year and say, yeah, they lost, it hurt, but it was ultimately important because it got them where they needed to be. It taught, they learned a lot, they developed. It was just an important season. You hope that that's what we're saying and not, they blew their chance and they don't pull a Celtics and just kind of backslide. But Bill Belichick, they have Bill Belichick, and I think that's the difference maker there. So it hurts. It certainly hurts. But I think it goes back to what I said earlier about the forest through the trees. This is a foundational year. It's essentially one big preseason. It's about everybody getting on the same page, learning to be a Patriot, Mac Jones picking up, playing in the NFL, and doing all that. They're going to win double-digit games. They should win double-digit games. You got to feel good about the long-term outlook of this team, even though, yeah, they lost the Bills. They lost the division. It sucks. It hurts. I get it.
You know what? You were the perfect guest to have on this week, for sure. Nick, I don't know about you, but I'm feeling so much better than I was when we turn the cameras and the mics on here.
Agree.
It's always the aftermath of a game like that, total frustration. I'm sure you guys go through it too. Your phone blows up with people just saying they're terrible. I'd bench this guy, I'd sit this guy, or whatever. Mac Jones can't play. They've been exposed. The whole gamut. I never buy into that. You feel better a little bit when you wake up in the morning and you've seen all the games and you have a little bit of perspective. And then when you pull way back, you say, okay, yeah, this team is right now in the playoffs. They win and they're in. That would have been beyond anyone's comprehension this time last year. You hoped that they had money to spend in free agency and were going to spend it. You hoped they would solve the quarterback problem. You'd hope they would draft well and add a pass rusher and some depth at running back, which they have. So yeah, we're not giving up on the season by any stretch, right? No one's saying we're ready to see them lose to Jacksonville and then just start playing for the draft. But they're in the hunt right now, and that was a pipe dream this time last year. when
Yeah.
you were looking at playing out the string with Cam Newton and I started looking at the quarterbacks in the draft or whatever. You've been looking at the draft already, Alex. It's one of the many qualities I like about you because I just don't have the 2-track brain to start focusing on this until after the season's over. So if you get anybody you can put on our radar, potential Patriots picks, someone that's going to be available at 32 when they're selecting.
So I keep a list of players on my phone. I won't read you all like 60 something I have on there. I just jot names down while I'm watching the games on Saturday. Maybe not at 32, but if they want to trade up a little bit, I think a guy who goes in the low 20s I really like is Darian Kennard, an offensive tackle from Kentucky. And if they want to move on from Isaiah Wynn-Wright, and we've talked about that potentially being a possibility, I think they did the experiment with Wynn of the smaller, agile guard, and it didn't work. And I think Wynn's a guy, the starting caliber left tackle, making $10 million. They can get some value for. He's just not a fit for their system. So let's go back the other way. Darian Kennard, 6'5", 355, left and right tackle. So that's a guy I really like for them potentially in the first round. I'm just going through the positions here. Or actually, I'll give you one more tackle because this guy's like 375. If you want the next Trent Brown, I got to find his name here because I'm losing it off the top of my head. Ohio State, Dwan Jones, the right tackle. On the defensive side of the ball, I think, and these are in no particular order, but I think linebacker is a big need. Mm-hmm. And Alabama has a middle linebacker, Henry Toto, borderline second, third round pick. I think he has a chance to really raise his stock here in the college football playoff. There is this guy, you're going to hear about Toto. There's one guy every year that's like, oh, how can Bill not draft him, right? I think that's Henry Toto this year. Plays for Alabama. He's a transfer. I talked earlier about how much they like transfers. Saban loves this kid. He transferred in from Tennessee to Alabama this year and learned the Alabama defense well enough to become the signal caller. As a first-year player in that wildly complex defense, he's just a really disciplined player. Like, that's one of his best strengths. He can play sideline to sideline. He can stop the run in the pass. So, but I don't quite compare him to Dante Hightower. They're different kinds of players, but I think if he succeeded Dante Hightower in that role, I think everybody would feel very comfortable with that. At corner, I like Kobe Bryant. I like Michael Wright. I think corner moves a ton during the combine, so you got to wait on that. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, I'm actually curious how you feel about this, Jerry. You tell me if I'm going too long here. Really good physical corner, 6'2", long arms, plays special teams. Sounds right up their alley, right? Joey Porter Jr. How would you feel about Joey Porter's son playing for the Patriots?
I'd be all over it. Seriously, I mean, just because attitude is in your DNA.
Right.
Some behavior is learned, but I'm more of a nature, not nurture guy. And okay. Joey Porter, while a psycho, was the kind of psycho that you want to have on your side, as long as you can control the psychosis. I mean, they had a hard time with Brandon Merriweather, a guy who came in with all the physical tools, but they just couldn't get him to stop making ridiculous hits that, yeah, great. You're standing over a guy who's now on the ground, but it's first down and 15 yards. So good for you. So yeah, okay.
He's one, and then if he comes out, and then I'll give you one more. Matt Araiza, the punt god from San Diego State. I don't know if you've seen this kid. He's gone viral on Twitter a couple times. He's putting the ball like 70 yards in the air. He's got this ridiculous spiral on it. He can also hit 60-yard field goals. Jake Bailey is there's a very easy out in his contract this year. Bill Belichick hasn't given a punter a second contract since he's been in New England, at least one that guy played under. So Matt Araiza, San Diego State. I'll close that list with him.
First round.
Look, if a punter was going to go in the first, if Al Davis was still alive, Matt Araiza is the Raiders' first round pick, and you can write that in Sharpie. He's special.
Alex, knowing you is like making friends with the smart kids in school like I used to, so that I could sit next to them and cheat off their tests, copy their notes and just be smarter because I let them do all the work. So I do that at camp when we're hanging out. I'm doing this in the draft now. Every one of those guys, I'm going to crib that off of you with no credit given. No,
I'd be honored.
I'm still burned by the fact that my oldest brother, called me the day before the draft and put Christian Barmore on my radar. said, I love this kid. I see the Patriots taking him. I'm telling you, I'm like, I did nothing with it, and it was a win and scratch ticket, and I just threw it away. So,
So
I'm all about hanging out with smarter people than me.
Yeah, I really want to tell this story because I love telling it. Me and Evan Lazar will kind of talk in the press box after games, and it was October last year, and it was I forget which loss it was, but it was a bad loss. It might have been the Niners loss. And we're talking, what are they going to do at quarterback? And I said to Evan, I looked him right in the eye, I said, Mac Jones, that's their guy. Second round if you have to, because he wasn't first round pick. And Evan goes, I wouldn't use more than a third round pick on Mac Jones. I don't know what you're talking about. Evan's now a bigger Mac Jones guy than me, but October, I told him, I looked him right in the eye, and he will confirm this. He won't be happy about it. Mac Jones, whatever you got to do, he's the guy. He's their guy. He's the fit. And wouldn't you know it, a year and a half later, he's the starting quarterback.
And Evan is a 4.0 student too. Like, a guy that if I'm stealing from somebody, it's you or him, right? And
he's great at that stuff, but I won't let him forget that story. I will never let him forget that.
Oh, that's fantastic. Okay, you know what? I will make sure I mention it next time we're all down there on a hot day, or in June for the OTAs or whatever. Well, Alex, this has been a blast, man. Thanks very much. It's a weird week. We're between the holidays, but it's still a work week if you're covering the Patriots, and you've been super generous with your time and with your insight. Plus, Nick, he made us feel better, right?
That's right.
I mean, how can we be grumpy when he's reminding us how good we have it? So, you're on 98.5 the Sports Hub. You're right for the Sports Hub website. You're at Real Alex Barth on Twitter, if I get that right. Okay, and you got other projects you want to plug? You're on Cameo, your OnlyFans page, whatever you got.
No, that's pretty much it. Twitter at Real Alex Barth. You can check out all my content, 985thesportshub.com. I'll be on a couple times this week, getting those fill-in shifts. So and I host the Patriots Beat podcast with Evan Lazar. You can find that on YouTube as well. So
very well. Okay. He's Alex Barth. He's Nick Fasoli. Thanks for joining us. Happy New Year, everybody. We will talk to you after the good Lord willing, a win over Jacksonville. Thanks for joining us.
All right. So obviously we didn't get a gift from the Patriots after Christmas, but luckily we have our good old guys hanging around, bringing us some late Christmas gifts. So we have 2 phone calls this week, Jerry. First one, his name is Tom. I don't think Brady, but Tom.
It could be.
Yeah, you never know.
Maybe it's Tom Sr.
Yeah, right?
No.
All right, so here's Tom.
Hey, this is Tom, repping Patriots Nation here in the state of Illinois. So a few things I wanted to say about the game is, I don't know, our defense really was not that great. They were just flat out disgusting. They were like basically the best defense in basically the league, like 16.2 points they allowed. Well, we gotta be better than that. But so far, I'm still hopeful for the next 2 games, even though Miami might seem like a really tough game, especially going down there. But still keep the faith. Go Pats. Yeah, let's get a dub. Let's get 2 dubs.
Okay. Lot to unpack there, Tom, from Illinois. And I always appreciate somebody who's living behind enemy lines. I've been in the comfy confines of living inside the Route 495 belt for basically my entire life. And rarely have I traveled during football season for the obvious reason that kind of working. And I would always love to know what it's like to live in a hostile land where everybody hates you and nobody wants to hear you talk because they know you're going to mention the 6 championships or whatever. So yeah, thanks for flying the flag out there for us all. Yeah, the defense, like we talked about in this podcast, Nick, damn hard to excuse.
Yeah.
Granted, Buffalo's a really good offense. Statistically, they've been top 3 basically the entire season. But you're at home. This is the time of year that you expect the number 1 defense in the league for the first 15 weeks to play like the number 1 defense in the league for the 16th week. And we got very little of that. Didn't make a stop, didn't make any negative plays, no sacks, no turnovers. So sometimes these games happen, but early in the year when we were freaking out just as much, we had games come up on the schedule from the Jets,
Yeah.
And they came at a perfect time when you get to play some teams that are garbage and take advantage of them. And Jacksonville right now is in total chaos,
They are.
as they really have been since the Pats beat them in the 2017 championship game. Interim coach, a rookie quarterback who has failed to thrive or be developed. So, sometimes the schedule makers just give you that kiss in the mail, and this would be the one. This is the time to right the ship. And I hope Tom from Illinois can start his new year off right the way
That's
we
right.
all need to. And then all eyes are on the Miami game, which will be football Mageddon. That will have a playoff spot riding on it, undoubtedly. And so give the defense a chance to right itself, because I don't think Josh Allen is going to come walking through that door again the rest of the season.
I agree. And hopefully Trevor Lawrence doesn't play as well as he does in commercials now.
Yeah. Have you seen the face swap thing, by the way?
Yeah.
With someone
Mac
swapped
and-
his hair and Mac's hair?
It's
Look,
scary.
I
Mac looks
just-
like a woman.
a beautiful woman.
Beautiful.
Like,
yeah.
I've got a crush on female Mac Jones. And I casually put that on Instagram, and I
Yeah.
don't have much of an Instagram presence. Every day my phone blows up with 1,000
Yeah.
comments and posts about that. It's gone viral. It's not my content. I'm not proud of it, but I'm never going to look at Trevor Lawrence the same.
And
'cause,
whoever owns that post, Jerry is not monetized, so do not come after him.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not making a dime off of this. It's just a public service. Okay, we've got another phone call again.
We
Thanks,
have a
Stefan
second
from
one.
Illinois.
Yes. And it's our good guy, Steve.
Oh, Steve from
Weymouth.
Weymouth.
Yep.
He's a regular.
He's a regular. So here we go.
Hey guys, Steve from Weymouth here. I don't really want to talk about the game because I'm sure you guys talked about it in the previous segments and everything and such. But I just gotta say, got approved. We're doing some stadium upgrades. Is this finally the Tommy statue? Do we think it's finally coming now? Did they get approved now? A couple years later, bring Tom Brady back? I don't know. But anyways, enough about him. What are we getting from the team store? I forgot Christmas. I gotta get some gifts. Give me some recommendations. All right, love the show. Steve from Weymouth.
Steve from Weymouth. I'm telling you, one of these times we're gonna grab a beer. Maybe Johnny Konos or Warren's. You know what? The Knights of Columbus and Columbian Square. I got in over there. So still got the same wood paneling they had when I joined back in college because I wanted to drink 85-cent beers. But okay, yeah, the stadium upgrade. It was interesting design. I like it. One of the things that the Crafts talked about when they built the place in 2001, because it opened in 2002, was that they wanted to have a lot of open space. They don't want to just make a bowl and cram as many seats in as they can. So there you got all the scaffolding. You can go up into the smoking section and grab a cigar at halftime or whatever and still watch the game. So yeah, they're building this complex. It's like this glassed in area above the bridge. Like the bridge will stay there. They're going to make the lighthouse look more like a lighthouse, which is something I've been calling for from the beginning, because it looks nothing like a lighthouse, not even like an abstract version of a lighthouse. It looks like a bug zapper.
Yeah. Looks like a what's it called? A mosquito zapper that you put in your outside your back door.
100%. Yeah. Or an erector set or something.
Yeah.
So I guess it's the glassed-in area is going to be a scoreboard that you can watch the game from behind it, but it'll be like projected onto glass. I don't know. It's supposed
to be the biggest. Actually, it's going to be the biggest screen in any NFL stadium, they're saying.
Unbelievable. Okay, looks cool.
Mega screen.
A couple years away, because to my knowledge, the only other redesign they've done since they built the place, and we're coming up on 20 years, is they had to expand the area where the banners go up.
Yeah, the banners, obviously.
Which is the greatest thing ever. I watched that construction, and I made sure that I posted that on Twitter as much as I could, because it's the kind of thing that goes up every other fan base's butt sideways. You go to the airport in Pittsburgh, where I go a lot because my kids in West Virginia, and they have like these signs inside the tram that takes you to the terminal that says, "This is why they call us Sixburg." And they thought they were gonna like lead the league in that forever. So the Patriots, I hope whatever they do with this end zone, that they still allow room for the 6 banners.
They're
that
going
Mac
to need
Jones
more.
is
Yeah,
gonna
they're going to
put
need
up there,
more.
yeah.
So.
And as far as what to get at the pro shop, hold off until we know what the uniforms for next year are going to look like.
Yes.
You don't want to be the guy that spends, $100 or more on a jersey only to have that jersey become obsolete, as Nick holds up
It was my
the
favorite
Mac
Christmas
Jones one
present
that he
this year,
got.
so take that back.
Okay, I know what I thought about some Jones material, but listen, this might be nostalgic. That might be a throwback jersey someday. I just want to see what they're going to do with the design. So until then, and also, nobody from this team is uncuttable. I had a credit over at the pro shop because I gave blood one time, and for nothing, I walked out of there with a T-shirt that looks like a jersey.
Nice.
And I got Stefan Gilmore. Like, hey, can't go wrong there, right?
Hey, those
no.
are like $5.99 now at Dick's.
Yeah, exactly. Defensive player of the year. I could have gotten an Edelman and it would have lasted me forever. So what I would suggest, if you need something right away, walk right in, and then the through the pro shop, right at the front table, they've got copies of 6 Rings by a brilliant author, a man of letters, an internationally renowned scholar on
Keep
the
going, keep
Patriots.
going.
Yes, exactly. And a good-looking cat too. But yeah, no, I was out of my mind when I went in there one time just to poke around, and because I had some time to kill, and they had it right there down front. So thank you to the Patriots organization for that. And I'm always happy to end the podcast with a shameless plug. And that was that. So you will be posting this before New Year's. Nick, do you have any plans at all for the holiday?
No, hopefully we can make it through 2020 into 2022 and this shit stops, because I need life again.
Oh God, yeah. Absolutely. I know the Barstool holiday party got kicked back a while, so
We canceled the
postpone it.
holiday party for the Arizona Bowl, and the
Yes.
worst tragedy of 2021 has occurred.
And canceled the Arizona Bowl.
Yep.
And without a reschedule. So it's a mess. Personally, I'm getting together with some friends, not always been an amateur hour holiday. Happy to just chill out a little bit and, enjoy that 5-minute trip home in terror that someone's going to T-bone me because they ran a red light or something, because they've never been out of the house
worst
before.
night of the year.
Yeah, exactly. So enjoy it. Hopefully the next day the Pats get that W that they need and then take care of business in Miami. But we'll be talking about that next week with a special guest we already have lined up. I'm looking forward to talking to that guy because he's one of my best friends in the world. And Nick, thanks again for all the job that we've done this year. We've still got a lot of meat left on this ball.
We do. I'm excited to talk to you again in 2022.
See you again. So again, thanks everyone for joining us. I'm Jerry Thornton. He's Nick Basoli. You can contact us at leave voicemails with me until next week. We'll talk to you soon. Sancha.